Nobody really talks about this part of retirement. Everyone talks about the finish line, the party, freedom, the finally I'm done moment. But almost nobody talks about what happens the first time you wake up on a random Tuesday and realize no money came in overnight. No paycheck, no deposit, no notification, just silence. And that silence messes with people. Because retirement isn't scary when you're planning it. It's scary when you're living it. When the math stops being theoretical and starts being monthly. When freedom suddenly feels expensive. And when you realize that saving money and replacing income are two completely different games. That's the mistake most retirees make. They think, I saved enough. What they really needed to think was, I replaced my salary. Because savings get smaller every time you touch them. Income shows up whether you're paying attention or not. And the retirees who sleep well at night aren't the ones with the biggest nest eggs. They're the ones with assets quietly doing the work for them. That's what we're talking about today. Not fantasies, not get-rich-quick nonsense. Real assets retirees use to recreate the feeling of a paycheck without a job. Assets that turn anxiety into structure, uncertainty into predictability, and retirement into something you don't constantly second-guess.
Let's start with the first one, because this is where most successful retirement income plans are anchored, even if nobody calls it exciting. Asset number one is dividend-paying stocks. Now, before your brain checks out, let me say this clearly. This is not about trading. This is not about watching charts. This is not about guessing what the market will do next week. This is about ownership. Boring, grown-up ownership of companies that make money whether you're paying attention or not. Dividend stocks work on a very simple idea. You own a piece of a business. That business earns profits. And instead of keeping all of it, they send a portion of those profits directly to you in cash, usually every 3 months, sometimes every month. And they do it again, and again, and again. That cash becomes income. Not someday, not when you sell, now. For retirees, this matters more than growth, because you're no longer trying to win a race, you're trying to maintain balance. You're trying to make sure money keeps coming in without forcing you to make decisions under pressure. Dividends remove that pressure. You don't have to guess when to sell. You don't have to time the market. You don't have to touch the principal if your plan's built correctly. And here's the part people underestimate. Dividends feel like a paycheck psychologically. That matters. When money arrives on a schedule, your nervous system relaxes. You stop checking balances every 5 minutes. You stop wondering if this is the year everything falls apart. You start planning again, living again, spending without guilt. Now, this only works if it's done right. Chasing high yields is how people blow this up. Strong dividend income comes from strong businesses, not desperate ones. The goal is durability. Companies that have been paying dividends for decades, through recessions, through wars, through market crashes. Businesses that raise prices, adapt, and keep cash flowing no matter what's happening on the news. Over time, something interesting happens. Many of these companies increase their dividends, slowly, quietly, year after year, which means your income rises even though you didn't do anything extra. That's how retirees protect themselves from inflation without taking reckless risks. Dividend income doesn't feel flashy, but it feels stable. And in retirement, stable beats exciting every single time. Now let's move to the second asset, because this one changes how people think about money altogether. Asset number 2 is rental real estate. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Tenants, repairs, headaches, but that's not the whole story. Real estate, when structured properly, is one of the closest things to a self-replacing paycheck that exists. Here's why. Rental property is simple at its core. Someone needs a place to live. You own the place. They pay you every month. That payment covers the costs. And if you bought correctly, there's money left over. That leftover is income. Not once, not occasionally, every month. What makes real estate so powerful for retirees isn't just the cash flow, it's how inflation works in your favor.
As prices rise, rents rise. But if your mortgage is fixed, your payment stays the same. Over time, the tenant pays more, you pay the same, and the difference becomes more income, quietly, automatically. There's also a psychological benefit here that people don't talk about enough. Rent shows up on a schedule, just like a paycheck used to. That regularity brings structure back into retirement. You know when money's coming. You know roughly how much, and you can plan your life around it without constantly dipping into savings. Now, does this mean every retiree should go buy 10 houses? Of course not. That's how people create stress instead of income. The retirees who use real estate well usually do it in a very intentional way. One property, maybe two, often paid off or close to it, sometimes professionally managed so they're not dealing with daily issues. The goal isn't to build an empire. The goal is to replace income with something tangible, something that exists regardless of market sentiment, something people will always need. And here's the part that often surprises people. Many retirees don't even realize how much income their real estate is producing because they've mentally labeled it as an asset instead of a paycheck. Once you shift that perspective, everything changes. That rent isn't just extra money, it's salary replacement, it's groceries, it's travel, it's peace of mind. Dividend stocks and rental real estate do something incredibly important together. They diversify how income shows up. One comes from businesses, the other comes from property. Different cycles, different risks, different strengths. But both are designed to pay you without requiring you to sell yourself back into the workforce. And this is just the foundation.
Let's keep going, because this is usually where people start leaning forward. The first two assets are familiar. They make sense. They feel solid. But the next three are where retirees really start separating themselves from the pack. These are the assets that turn a maybe I'm okay retirement into a I know I'm okay retirement. Asset number 3 is bonds and fixed income instruments. Now I know bonds don't get anyone excited. Nobody brags about them at dinner parties. But bonds were never meant to impress anyone. They were designed to do one job extremely well: send you predictable income without drama. At their core, bonds are simple. You're lending money. In return, you get paid interest on a schedule. Monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, whatever the structure is, you know exactly what's coming and when it's coming. That certainty is priceless in retirement. For retirees, bonds aren't about maximizing returns. They're about stabilizing cash flow. They're about smoothing out the ride so market swings don't dictate your mood or your spending. When stocks are volatile and headlines are screaming, bond income keeps showing up quietly, doing exactly what it promised to do. And here's something people misunderstand. Bonds aren't just one thing. There are government bonds, corporate bonds, municipal bonds, bond funds, ladders, and structured products. Some prioritize safety, some prioritize income, some balance both. The retirees who use bonds well don't chase yield. They build systems. They ladder maturities so money is always coming due. They align payouts with expenses. They match income to life. Another overlooked advantage, bonds help you avoid selling other assets at the wrong time. When markets drop, retirees without income panic. They sell stocks when they're down. They lock in losses. Bond income reduces that pressure. It buys time, and time is one of the most valuable assets you have in retirement. Asset number 4 is annuities, specifically income annuities. Now, let's be honest, annuities have a terrible reputation. Some of it is deserved, some of it isn't. The problem isn't annuities themselves. The problem is how they're sold, explained, and misunderstood. At their best, income annuities do one thing extremely well. They turn a lump sum into a guaranteed paycheck for life. You give an insurance company a chunk of money. In return, they promise to send you income every month for as long as you live. No market risk, no decisions, no guesswork.
For retirees who are tired of managing money, this can be incredibly powerful. It's the closest thing to recreating a pension in a world where pensions barely exist anymore. You don't worry about longevity risk, you don't worry about outliving your savings, you don't worry about market crashes ruining your plans. Is it perfect? No. You give up liquidity, you lose some flexibility. But that's the trade-off for certainty. And for many retirees, certainty is worth far more than optionality. The smartest retirees don't put all their money into annuities. They use them strategically. They cover core expenses, housing, food, utilities, healthcare, the stuff you can't negotiate away. Once those are covered by guaranteed income, everything else becomes easier. Market volatility becomes background noise. Spending becomes intentional instead of fearful. Annuities aren't about returns, they're about sleep. And for a lot of retirees, better sleep is the real return. Asset number 5 is business ownership, specifically small, semi-passive businesses. Now, before you panic, this doesn't mean opening a restaurant or grinding 80 hours a week. This means owning something that produces cash flow without requiring you to be the engine. Think car washes, storage facilities, laundromats, online businesses, content websites, franchises with management in place, private partnerships, royalties, licensing. There are more options today than ever before. The appeal here is control. Unlike public markets, you can often see exactly how money is made. You can adjust pricing, reduce costs, improve efficiency. And when done right, these businesses can throw off reliable income with relatively limited involvement. For retirees who still want purpose, structure, or light engagement, this asset can be incredibly satisfying. You're not working in the traditional sense. You're overseeing, you're guiding, you're collecting income from systems that run whether you're present or not. There's also an identity benefit here that's hard to quantify, but very real. Retirement can feel like disappearance. Business ownership gives you something to anchor to, something to care about, something that makes you feel relevant without exhausting you. Of course, this asset requires due diligence. Bad businesses create stress. Good ones create freedom. The retirees who succeed here start small. They learn. They don't bet the farm. They focus on cash flow, not ego. When you put assets 3, 4, and 5 together, something interesting happens. Income starts coming from multiple directions, some guaranteed, some flexible, some controllable. You're no longer dependent on a single system or assumption. You're diversified not just in investments, but in income streams. And that's the real goal of retirement income planning. Not maximum returns, not perfect predictions, but resilience. We've covered 5 assets so far, and the final 3 are where everything ties together. This is where retirement income planning stops being about money alone and starts being about design. Because by now, you've probably noticed a pattern. The retirees who feel secure aren't guessing. They're not hoping markets cooperate. They've intentionally stacked income so that if one thing wobbles, 5 other things keep standing. That's what the final 3 assets do. They close the gaps most people don't realize exist until it's too late. Asset number 6 is delayed Social Security. And I know that might sound strange to call Social Security an asset, but functionally, that's exactly what it is. It's a government-backed, inflation-adjusted income stream that lasts for life. There is almost nothing else like it. The mistake people make is treating Social Security as something you take instead of something you optimize. When you delay Social Security, your benefit grows every year. Not just a little, significantly. That increase is guaranteed. No market risk, no management, no stress. For retirees who can bridge the gap using other assets, dividends, rent, bond income, delaying Social Security often becomes one of the highest return decisions they'll ever make. It increases your lifetime income, it protects against longevity risk, and it provides a larger, more reliable paycheck later in life when flexibility may be lower and expenses like healthcare may be higher.
There's also a psychological shift that happens when Social Security becomes a foundation instead of a supplement. Once that larger check starts showing up every month, it creates a floor, a sense of no matter what happens, this is covered. That feeling is priceless. Smart retirees don't rush this decision, they coordinate it. They use other income early so Social Security can grow quietly in the background. And when it turns on, it often becomes the most dependable piece of the entire income puzzle. Asset number 7 is cash flow-focused investment funds. Not growth funds, not speculative bets, funds designed to produce income. These might include REIT funds, covered call funds, income ETFs, or diversified cash flow portfolios built specifically for distribution. The advantage here is simplicity. Instead of managing individual assets, retirees can own a professionally structured pool that sends income regularly. Monthly distributions are common, and for many people that monthly rhythm feels familiar, comfortable, like the paycheck cadence they lived with for decades. Now, this asset requires discipline. High income often comes with trade-offs. Some funds sacrifice growth. Some use strategies that need to be understood before committing. But when used correctly and in moderation, these funds can fill income gaps very effectively. They also provide flexibility. Need more income this year? Adjust allocations. Need less next year? Rebalance. These funds allow retirees to fine-tune cash flow without selling entire assets or making irreversible decisions. The key here isn't chasing the highest yield, it's consistency, sustainability, understanding how income is generated and whether it can continue through different market environments. Retirees who succeed here focus on reliability, not headlines. And now we come to the final asset, the one almost nobody thinks of this way, but the one that often makes the biggest difference over time. Asset number 8 is controlled spending power. This doesn't sound like an asset, but it absolutely is. Because income isn't just about how much comes in, it's about how long it lasts. Retirees who feel wealthy aren't always the ones with the highest income. They're the ones who can adjust spending without feeling deprived. Controlled spending power means flexibility. It means knowing which expenses are fixed and which are optional. It means designing a lifestyle where enjoyment isn't dependent on constant spending increases. Travel that can be scaled, hobbies that don't require endless upgrades, housing choices that don't trap you in rising costs. This asset gives you leverage. If markets dip, you don't panic because you can pull back temporarily. If inflation spikes, you adjust intelligently instead of emotionally. You're not locked into a life that demands maximum income forever. The most relaxed retirees understand this deeply. They know their enough number for income. Anything above that is optional, bonus, freedom. And that mindset changes everything. When you combine all 8 assets, dividends, real estate, bonds, annuities, business income, optimized Social Security, income-focused funds, and controlled spending, you stop relying on hope. You start relying on systems. Retirement stops being a cliff you fall off and becomes a platform you stand on. And that's the difference between worrying about money every morning and waking up knowing the paycheck has already been replaced. That's the goal. Not perfection, not excess, just confidence. And confidence in retirement is the real luxury.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future videos. See you in the next one.